G'day guys, Googs here. Today I'm going to be talking about the Western Australian election. I'm a Western Australian, and if you're new to this channel, I do talk quite a bit about politics. For those of you who watch me on a semi-regular basis as I make these films, bear with me. You might learn something about WA politics. If you're not interested, I completely understand if you don't want to watch this. So, last night, yesterday, the election happened in Western Australia. Labor Party, Liberal Party, apparently the two front runners. What has transpired with the vote last night has turned into an absolute rout as far as the Liberal Party is concerned. Now, in Australia, the two major parties, state or federal, are Labor Party, Liberal Party. And in our state, the Liberal Party and the Nationals aren't actually a coalition. That's at the federal level. So we had our state election, and the Liberals have been left with 2 seats in the Senate, upper house, no seats in the lower house, the Legislative Assembly. The Nats, the National Party, 2 at this point, upper house, Senate, and 1 seat in the Legislative Party. The Greens have 1 seat in the Legislative Party, and pretty much everything else is just Labor across the board. It was an absolute whitewashing. It was a swing in our state of close to 42% in favour of Labor away from the Liberal Party. In fact, it is now at the point where the Nationals, the National Party, who are always sort of the third party in line, if you like, are now the actual opposition party of Western Australia. How did this happen? How did this happen? Now, I'm going to state unequivocally, I didn't vote Labor, I did not vote Liberal. Okay, full disclosure, I'm a member of the Liberal Democrats Party. This was our first run. We didn't get a seat. In fact, we got very few votes. I wasn't expecting much, considering it's our first run. And in Western Australia, we're pretty much unknown as a quantity, as a political force. And that's fine. So that's my full disclosure. So I'm not on the Labor Party side. I'm not on the Liberal Party side. What happened? Well, the first thing that happened was there was 2 leadership changes in the last 3 years in the opposition Liberal Party. That was the first thing that happened that people might have noticed. In Australia, there is a history of our political parties, specifically the ones in charge, swapping in and out their leaders, prime ministers, premiers, etc., on a popular Nelson poll vote heard by some people on Sunrise, okay? This is a problem, because people saw that and went, well, that's number 1. Number 2, we had a lot of bushfires down south early last year, okay, and late 2019. After the bushfires had been and gone, the Premier, Mark McGowan, went around and visited many of these places, these voluntary people who did the jobs, the Volley bushfires, the Volley SES, all that sort of thing, the Volley Ambos who were involved, went to the units and specifically only went there to talk to them, to thank them for a job well done. That's a lot of street cred there. That's a lot of people going, well, you know, that's a good idea. Economy since COVID has been very stable. One of the reasons it's been very stable is Mark McGowan has stuck to his guns in terms of Western Australia getting the GST we're owed. We don't get completely what we're owed, but we've got a little bit more in the last 2 years or 3 years since Mark McGowan's been in power, consistently. There's a lot of roadworks going on. There's a lot of other really good things that Mark McGowan is doing for our state. He's reaching out to the farmers. He's reaching out to the miners. He's reaching out to the Aboriginal people who own the land with the miners. He is a good and respected leader. Now that instantly tells you, just from that little bit there, that he was well liked. Then COVID hit. Now, we did the 3-week lockdown, and he broke us into our constituent regions. You had to get a pass to go there. It was a pain in the ass. But after that, we've only had one lockdown since, and that was a few weeks ago in Perth and Vass and Peel. Okay, the regions going south, Perth and south of Perth. So Perth, Mandurah, Bunbury, Busselton, that sort of thing. Okay? But that was for 4 or 5 days, and then that was done. Unlike other states where we've had lockdown after lockdown after lockdown after lockdown, especially if you're a person who lived in Victoria, Mark McGowan has been very good with COVID and people's liberty. People remember this. Kept our border up. Our border is still standing. Our hard border is still standing. Yes, you can come in from other places in Australia. And if you're an Australian resident, you don't need to do your 2 weeks. If you've come in from overseas or something like that, yes, you still have to do your 2 weeks. Western Australians, we like the concept of we're our own dogs. We are essentially the Lone Star state of Australia, or at least we a lot of us think of ourselves in those terms. So that makes him popular again. So did great on COVID, keeps our economy going really well, really strong. Thanks the volunteers and is very grateful for the volunteers. He keeps, stands up to Canberra in our interests. The guy has done an amazing job. An amazing job. In fact, out of all the politicians, premiers I've had since I started becoming politically aware, in my teens, he's the first one that I can honestly say is doing a fantastic job for our state and representing us as a state and our interests. So the Liberals were already up against it because the Labor Party was doing quite a good job and their leader was fantastic. Okay? The Liberal Party, let's go to them. Recently they decided to put Zach Kirkup as their leader. And instantly alarm bells started ringing for people. You see, young Zach, and he is young, he's 34 years of age, and that's very young to be leading a political party in Australia, especially one that has normally such gravitas as the Liberal Party, very little experience. He'd only been involved in politics directly for 3 or 4 years as an advisor. He really didn't know what he was doing. The policy platform they were running on was terrible. Essentially, the only major point they had was we're going to sell off Western Power, which is our electricity mob, which is owned by the government. And we're not going to tell you who we're going to sell it to or how that was going to go down. And we're going to do it in the name of competition, even though they're only planning on selling it to one company, which means that company can then charge us whatever he likes. And on top of that, hey, we're going to own the infrastructure, though. The state's going to own the infrastructure, so we're going to get taxed for the infrastructure and then get hit by whatever price this company wants. Well, yeah, I can see electricity bills going through the damn roof. And by the way, in every other state in Australia where they've sold off their electricity to other companies, that's exactly what's happened. Now, it's good for going solar. I have no problems with that. But there's better ways to force the situation than the hip pocket, especially if you're a poor person. But that was essentially it. 20,000 new jobs. No explanation how they were going to create those new jobs or how those new jobs, what they were going to do to make those new jobs occur. There was no tax cuts, which is usually the first thing that we're going to do tax cuts for small businesses, which means small businesses can employ more people and got more people employed. Nothing like that. Basically, it was just all pipe dreams and rubbish, except for that Western Power thing, right? So they had nothing. They had a young guy, and it's nothing against Zach. You can't help your age, but you want somebody with a little bit, less water behind their ears and who knew something more about politics and being in there for 4 or 5 years. their ad campaigns, and I can only talk for my region because I'm only in my region, that's Geraldton region, the Midwest of Western Australia. They had flyers all over the place. I saw a couple of ads here and there about, you can't trust Labor, which is a very bad argument to try to make. But they didn't tell anybody what they were up to because I think they knew. Okay? And I'm going to be honest about where I saw the Liberal Party. They knew they were going to lose. That's why they had a very inexperienced young man by the name of Zach in charge of the party. Their platforms were weak. There was nothing to them. You try to go to their website to look up their policies, and their policies were literally, there was no reading between the lines with them. They were just literally cut and paste. Oh, that's what we think we should do. There was no thought behind it. There was no process behind it. It was terrible. The whole idea of them was tragic. They knew they were going to lose. 3 weeks ago, Zach came out and conceded the election then. And that's another reason they lost. Because at that point, your swing voters and your moderates who might have been thinking about the Liberal Party just as a change to the Labor Party, you've lost them instantly. You've said, oh, no, don't vote for us. We suck. We're going to lose. We know it. You're not saying it's an uphill battle. We're the underdog. Everyone likes an underdog. Come on, get in there and fight. No, we're going to lose. We can see. In other words, they knew they were going to lose. Now, maybe they're going to do this to restructure. But for the first time in Western Australian history, the Liberal Party is not the opposition if Labor wins. It's the Nationals. The Nationals. Now, for those of you who might wonder why the Nats got more than the Libs, Western Australia is high mining, high agriculture, and Nationals are the party of agriculture and mining. So, well, at least traditionally that's what they're considered. So that's why they've actually done better than the Libs. Labor, on the other hand, ran great Facebook campaigns. Fantastic Facebook. From day one of the run-up to the election, they had their marketing campaign down. Twitter, Facebook, radio, telly, okay, newspaper, spreadsheets. Even though they're not as popular as they once were, still had them. They were everywhere. But they were fairly tasteful too. It's like, well, this is what we're going to do, and the other mob aren't going to do anything. The Liberal Party have, if you're a Liberal partisan, a state partisan, or even a federal partisan at this point, I'd be very worried about this election and the way it's gone down, because they literally threw the game. They threw the damn game. The Liberals threw the game. Labor was going to win anyway. I can tell you that now. They were right, but you don't throw the game. They threw the game. And now they've got 2 seats. 2 seats. Which means that Labor now has a complete mandate. Here's the issue I have with that. It means that Labor can do whatever it wants. Literally, legitimately, can do whatever it wants. Who's going to stop them? There is no other power. Even if you got the Nats, the Libs, and the Greens, and all the other people that had 1 or 2 seats here and there together, you're not going to beat Labor with the numbers they've now got. So Labor now have a mandate to do anything in this state they want. Now, at this stage, I'm very hopeful because Mark McGowan has been a great leader. He's been very respectful to the people, for the people, and has fought on our behalf. So I'm really hoping that that's the way that stays, that he keeps that humility in leadership going. There's never a guarantee. It also means that future elections, unless the Liberals pull something out of their hats, and I mean something major out of their hats, it might take them decades to get back. On the other hand, it's an opportunity for the Nationals and the Greens and some of these other smaller parties who, for the first time ever, now have the political opportunity to take their platforms and their political parties and actually boost them up. It's going to be a very interesting time for my state. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Nathan Cook Fletcher. This is My Drunk Philosophy, and I'll catch you guys down the road. Hooroo! Be good, be safe, don't be evil.